Marie wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that morning, her worn hands moving in practiced circles across the faded formica. The diner was empty except for the usual hum of the ancient refrigerator and the occasional sizzle from the grill, where Carlos prepared for the lunch rush. Through the fingerprint-smudged windows, she could see the gray November sky threatening rain, matching the weariness she felt in her bones after another double shift. That's when she saw him. The old man shuffled past the window, his coat too thin for the weather, his shoulders hunched against a wind that seemed to blow straight through him. She'd seen him before, always walking this same route, always alone, always with that look of profound loneliness that made her chest ache. Marie knew that look. She'd worn it herself during the long months after her husband died, leaving her with 2 kids to raise and medical bills that seemed to multiply like weeds. The next day, when the old man passed again, Marie made a decision. She prepared a sandwich, turkey and cheese with extra pickles, wrapped it carefully in foil, and set it on the bench outside the diner with a thermos of hot coffee. She watched from inside as he discovered it, saw the way his hands trembled as he unwrapped the food, the tears that slipped down his weathered cheeks. He looked around, searching for his benefactor, but Marie stayed hidden behind the counter, feeling foolish and brave all at once. It became her ritual. Every morning at 9:30, she'd prepare a meal, whatever they had extra of, whatever she could spare. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes, soup with fresh bread, sometimes just eggs and toast, but always hot, always wrapped with care. She never revealed herself, never sought thanks or recognition. Her manager, Tom, noticed the missing food but said nothing. He'd seen enough of life to recognize kindness when he saw it. Marie's daughter Sarah was starting college next fall, and the tuition weighed on Marie's mind like a stone. She picked up extra shifts, cut corners where she could, but the numbers never seemed to add up. Still, she couldn't bring herself to stop feeding the old man. Some things mattered more than money, her grandmother used to say, and as she watched him eat each day, grateful and careful not to waste a single crumb, she understood what that meant. 3 months passed this way. The old man grew stronger, stood a little straighter, seemed to carry less of that crushing loneliness. Marie learned his route, knew his schedule better than her own. She began including little notes, nothing signed, just simple words of encouragement. You matter. Tomorrow will be better. Someone cares. She'd find the notes later, folded carefully in his pocket when he set down the thermos, kept like treasures. Then one morning, everything changed. Marie arrived at work to find 2 sleek black SUVs parked outside the diner, so out of place on this tired street that she felt a flutter of anxiety. Men in expensive suits stood talking in low voices, and for a wild moment, she thought she'd done something wrong, that somehow, her small act of kindness had broken some law she didn't know existed. The old man was there too, but transformed. He stood taller, wore a proper coat, and beside him was a younger man who had his eyes. When Marie approached, uncertain and afraid, the old man smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. His name was Henry Chin, and he'd once owned a successful manufacturing business before tragedy struck. His wife died, his son blamed him for working too much, and grief had consumed him until he'd lost everything, spiraling into depression and homelessness. But the food, the notes, the daily reminder that someone in this vast, indifferent world cared whether he lived or died, it had saved him. He'd reconnected with his son, the young man beside him, who'd been searching for him for over a year. Together, they'd started rebuilding. And Henry's son had watched from a distance as Marie left those meals, wanting to respect his father's privacy while he healed. Now they wanted to thank her. The son handed Marie an envelope, but she shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She hadn't done it for reward. She'd done it because it was right, because she knew hunger and loneliness, because small kindnesses were all that had kept her going through her darkest days. Henry took her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Inside the envelope was a check for Sarah's full college tuition, but more than that, there was a job offer. His company needed someone with Marie's heart, someone who understood that business was about people, not just profit. They wanted her to run their new community outreach program, helping other forgotten souls find their way back. Marie looked around the diner, at Carlos grinning by the grill, at Tom wiping his eyes pretending he had allergies, at the cracked vinyl seats and flickering neon sign. She'd thought her world was small, her impact smaller. But kindness, she realized, was never small. It rippled outward in ways impossible to measure, touching lives, changing futures, proving that one person, armed with nothing but compassion, could alter the trajectory of another's existence. She'd fed a hungry man. He'd restored her faith that goodness still mattered in this world. And together, they'd discovered that redemption comes not from grand gestures but from simple, daily acts of human decency. Sometimes salvation arrives not in thunder but in a sandwich wrapped with care, a thermos of hot coffee, and a note reminding someone that they're not alone. That evening, Marie called Sarah to tell her about college, about the job, about everything. But what she wanted her daughter to understand most was this. The measure of a life is unfound in what we accumulate but in what we give away, especially when we have so little to spare.